Hey everyone, I'm Nate.
I'm John.
Welcome to Casual Theology. And we're a little pressed for time, so we're going to try and make this episode quicker than normal.
Well, or we'll do two parts. This is a complicated issue that we're talking about today, and it's very controversial.
Which is part of why we waited to do it until we had two videos under our belt already.
Yep. All right, so the issue is abortion. Maybe you've heard of it. So the debate on abortion is super complex, and I
highly politicized too.
I know where to begin theologically and biblically, so I think maybe that's where we should start. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, that works. So
okay, so if you go to the Bible, there's a passage in Psalm 139 that says, I think David wrote it.
Oh yeah, that one.
You know that one?
You put me together in my mom's womb.
Yes. The ESV says, "For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb." That's a pretty pro-life argument, in theologically speaking.
Right.
God is forming that embryo in the womb. And this is a work of God. This is a special creation of His, and so that's a pretty strong argument, I think, for personhood,
right, of
a baby in the womb.
But from what I've heard, there is actually a debate on whether an embryo is its own distinct being or a functional part of the mother's body. I think the answer to that debate lies more in the genetics, in the DNA.
Yes.
And at what point does the embryo, is it always, from the point of fertilization, is it genetically distinct, or do the father's genes eventually get added at some point down the road? And that's right. What I don't know.
And that's what is known, and it's been known for a while, that the way a new life is created is at conception, the DNA of the father and the DNA of the mother combine and form a new individual. And so it's conception. And there's a French geneticist. His name is Jeremy Lejeune. And of course, I don't speak French, so I probably butchered the pronunciation of his name. But he says each individual has a very neat beginning, the moment of its conception. To accept the fact that fertilization has taken place, a new human being has come into being, is no longer a matter of taste or opinion. So we look at the Bible and it says God is forming a human being in its mother's womb. We look at science and genetics in particular, and we see that there is a distinct individual at the moment of conception. If we were to go backwards in time to 1973, to Roe versus Wade. Are you familiar with Roe v. Wade?
I am.
This was a landmark case. It was actually decided in conjunction with another case.
There was another one too?
Yeah, there were two cases that year. Roe v. Wade is the one that everybody knows. The other one was, I can't remember, Doe versus something. But both of those went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided to decide on them at once together. And the bottom line was, they said abortion would now be legal. And in the majority decision paper written by one of the justices named Harry Blockman, he said, if prenatal personhood is established, the case for abortion collapses. I think that's really interesting. He said, if you can prove that the baby in the womb is its own person, then the argument for abortion collapses. And then he says, the fetus's right to life would be guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. And so, for conservatives, the personhood of that fetus has become the crux of their argument. Since then, we wanted to prove that this was an individual life, a person, and that happened genetically when genetics kind of got down to it, and they said, yeah, it definitely is. And so then what had to happen was the argument on the pro-abortion side had to change. And it did change. They no longer make that argument. They do still say, my body, my choice, but they don't make it from a genetic or scientific perspective. They make it from the perspective of, it's in my body, so I get to choose what to do with it. It's like I own it. Even though it's its own being, they won't argue that. Even though it's its own person,
I've actually seen I've seen people very recently trying to argue that it's not its own being.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they've failed to look at the science then.
or they'll say that the science we just put out, the science we just used to defend it is false or misleading or paid for by the conservatives or
right.
Fake news.
Of course. Sure. Yeah. Scientific consensus.
And I do think it is a little complicated because it's not just the embryo involved. There's also a mom involved.
Right. That's true. Absolutely. So at least from, this channel is called Casual Theology. So at least from a theological perspective, I don't have a good example that I know of anywhere that says abortion is theologically permissible or good. Even my most progressive Christian friends have said to me, abortion is a sometimes necessary evil, but it is evil. And I think that's an important admission that even my most progressive friends, if they're Christian, they know what the Bible says, and they say, well, yeah, it's not good, but sometimes it might be necessary. And of course, they give the two classic examples of when it would be necessary. Do you know what those are?
Rape and incest.
Yeah, those are actually kind of together. Rape and incest are together.
And then when there's a danger to one or both of the bodies.
Well, to the mother in particular. If there's a danger to the mother,
right.
That those are the cases where it is believed to be a necessary evil. So anyway, that is where the battle kind of currently
although I do
goes.
I do think it would be worth touching on cases outside of those two. Just for example, unplanned coincidental pregnancy. Like,
right.
What is the best course of action there? Because once again, it's not just an embryo. There's also a mom who might not have wanted this to happen.
So theologically, we say that God promotes life. That's the whole series. Yep,
that's our whole series so far.
This is the third part of that series, fourth video, third part, and the question is, what would do the best in promoting life? The life of the mother and the life of the child and the life of the people in the community, because nobody's an island, right? So the mother and the child, they're the primary people to think about, but are there other people involved? Clearly, there's at least one. You know who?
The dad.
Yeah, there's a dad.
Although you could make a case that in a lot of these situations, the dad might not even be in the picture anymore.
In a lot of situations, that's true, but it's not always. And the dad has no rights when it comes to what happens with that child, which I think is sad. Because if he wanted to raise it and said, well, no, you don't have to abort it, and you don't have to raise it, I'll take it. But that's not.
There is still the terrible inconvenience of pregnancy, though.
Yes,
to worry about.
There is a terrible.
Although I
inconvenience
don't know,
of pregnancy.
is there a way to extract an embryo from the womb?
Not viably. the viability of
Crumbs.
a
Here I thought
fetus,
we had a workaround.
the viability begins at about what do I want to say? It's really late. It
Really?
tends to be around 22 weeks
So,
out
so
of
there's-
39.
So there's no way to move it to another place where it can develop.
Not yet. It would be maybe someday, but not yet.
Scientists, get on it.
Yeah, seriously. So people try to draw these different lines about when it's okay to take the life of a fetus. Some people draw the line at the heartbeat, which part of the reason that this is relevant is there is a bill in Texas right now called the Heartbeat Bill. At least that's what people are calling it. That says you cannot do an abortion after the baby has a heartbeat. Okay, well, that happens to be around 6 weeks after conception. Some women don't even find out they're pregnant that soon. So that's where there's a lot of controversy. Now, typically, you have a pretty good idea within the 4th and 5th week. But that doesn't give you a lot of time either.
Right.
And some women know super early. And it kind of depends. Different women know their body different. But that's 6 weeks. So other people have suggested, well, rather than the heartbeat, let's talk about pain and the nervous system. And when is a fetus able to feel pain? Maybe at that point we should not viciously tear it from limb from limb, right? Or use chemicals that poison it or kill it or burn it, because they can feel pain, and we don't want to cause anybody pain. If that's where you draw the line, that also is. There's evidence to suggest that could be as early as the 6-week mark, but it's definitely by the 12-week mark. And so there's the science there is actually has not been fully confirmed as to a specific week. Or you could go the route of the ability for it to live outside the womb, like you were suggesting. That would be week 22, which in my view is pretty late. Yeah.
I thought you were going back to the whole extracting it and letting it develop somewhere else.
Well, yeah, it's you're talking about taking it out of the womb, and you can't do that until it can live on its own.
Although
with some help,
don't test tube babies already exist?
That's a little bit of a different technology.
Oh.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about that to comment on it.
Okay. Maybe I'll look it up and we'll do another bonus episode like we did for the capital punishment.
Absolutely. So at any rate, the whole idea of personhood, if we were just talk about that and that was it, the theological data and the scientific data are clear and unified. Personhood is established at conception. So then you have the other arguments, and that's where things get dicey.
And I've been trying to sort of steer us in here this whole video.
Yeah.
So
where do you want to start? What are some of the arguments you've heard?
I think we've already touched on a lot of them.
Okay.
While I've been trying to steer it into that territory.
Okay.
I think one thing we haven't touched on is so there's not a way yet to make it so that a child can develop,
beam it out with a transporter beam into another womb,
or even just take the amniotic sac,
right,
and transfer it to a different location.
Yeah,
not yet.
Even if that was something we could work on and figure out, there is no incentive, because why do that? You can just kill it. That's the attitude from the majority of the people who would even be looking at this. So, yeah, just so you know, that's even if that were something we could someday do, nobody has any incentive to figure that out.
I'm sure there are some Christian. What would you call that sort of scientist?
Well, it would be. I don't know. I don't know what you'd call that.
I'm sure there are some who would be would have a pretty good incentive to look into that. So
Yeah.
if any of you guys are looking into a science career, please, we're begging you, look into this.
Yeah, the inconvenience of pregnancy is cited a lot as a reason to get an abortion. I just heard an interview with a woman named Lila Rose. She was a student at UCLA, very pro-life, but that school was not. And this was many years ago, I think in the 2000s. And she, just to see what would happen, walked into the health office to the person there and said, "I'm pregnant." She wasn't. She just wanted to know what they would say. And she said, "I think I'm pregnant. What should I do?" And they said, "UCLA has nothing to support pregnant mothers. We have no resources for you, but we can give you a referral to one of two doctors who can give you an abortion." And she said, "Well, I really want to keep the baby. Is there a way for me to do that?" And the person talking to her basically said, "No. This would be the inconvenient word, whether or not it was spoken explicitly or implied, was so strong that they said this wouldn't make any sense. Why would you want to go to school and be a student as a pregnant person? It's embarrassing. It's distracting. You should just get an abortion." And that's what she was told. So the pressure is very strong.
There, I think that definitely crosses a line that shouldn't be crossed when you're actively pressuring people to do that.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with that. But there's a lot of pressure out there. And there's pressure in Christian schools and in churches as well. Because
to do the opposite.
No, to do it and not let anybody know.
Oh.
Because there's a stigma placed on a pregnant teenager, right? So if you think, "Oh man, if I get an abortion and nobody knows, then I won't lose my status in the church. People won't judge me and look at me." I actually know of a girl who got pregnant, was kind of thinking of keeping the baby, wasn't sure if she should or not, and then she was given a scholarship to a Christian college, and she knew she could not have a baby and attend college, so she chose an abortion and then went to a Christian college and told almost nobody. But that happens, and that kind of thing happens.
And that might be a bit of a failing of the church as well.
Yes.
Putting a stigma on
Absolutely. And that's one of the arguments against the Christian view, is that we are not very gracious and loving to unwed mothers. And that needs to change.
That actually, I saw a comic that was making that exact point on the internet not too long ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep, it's true. But the Christian view, the theological view, is idealistic.
Yeah.
The ideal is to recognize that sex itself is a gift from God for this sacred purpose, and that is to bring another human life into existence. That's why sex exists. It's not to bring you pleasure. It's not to help you stay in love with your boyfriend or girlfriend. It's to bring a life into the world. That's its purpose. So if you get pregnant and then you abort the baby, then you have done something to destroy the purpose of sex. You have destroyed that purpose, and that's really, really important from a theological perspective.
But obviously that in the church today, that tends to get translated into a lot of abuse.
Yes, and tell me in what way?
Where pregnant mothers or single expecting mothers tend to get treated very poorly in the church, like you mentioned
Right.
before.
Right.
And that-
Exactly.
And that's part of how we as Christians can maybe not intentionally, but still make the situation worse.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Although I think there is one option that we haven't touched on. Now, obviously, like you said, there is no way yet to completely
To just say,
just-
we'll take the
there-
life out of you and raise it over here.
Yeah, there's no
somewhere
way to
else.
circumvent
We
the
cannot
pregnancy
do that.
part of it, but
Right.
there is one other option if one can endure the 9 months of inconvenience, and that's adoption.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end this video and maybe talk about the adoption option,
Okay.
which I didn't intend to rhyme, but I did. And we'll talk about that next time. Let's talk about, in our next video, what it means to carry a baby to term if you don't intend to keep it.
Right.
Because that's a complicated mess as well. And
So
it's important.
we'll probably put out the second part of this sooner than we normally would. So
stay tuned, click subscribe, click the notification bell, and you'll know when it shows up, when we actually get the videos up.
and if you have any insights, leave a comment.
Yeah, as long as they are civil and kind. Even if you
Please.
think we're wrong, just be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So we will see y'all soon.
Yep. Bye.